Feast week is upon us. Welcome all into the unofficial WCC Hoops podcast. I'm Zach, that's Thomas, and we've got a ton of basketball to review, to talk about. We'll get into all of that. We'll also be talking with LMU guard MJ Amey on the start that the Lions have had and really just the momentum that 6-0 Lion team, only for the second time in school history, they've been able to get to the 6-0 mark, and what this is going to look like as they start their MTE, their multi-team event on Monday. They're going to be at the what is it? I'm blanking on the number of different events that are happening.
It's in Daytona.
This week.
All I know
in Daytona, the Sunshine Slam.
There we go.
They'll be there in the beach division. Pacific will also be in town as part of the ocean division in that same event. So a couple of different WCC teams in that one. So we'll get into all of that as we go along. Before we get any further, be sure to hit that subscribe button and follow along on social media at unofficial WCC pod. And as we kind of start to look at Feast Week, think about the games that we're going to see. We got to start with how we're feeling going in and what stood out in the past week, because there were definitely some things that looked good. There were definitely some things that looked not so good. What stood out to you in this past week? Because there were definitely some things that jumped out at me.
Yeah, so I'm going to start with my low-hanging fruit. And for those of you who know what I do outside of this podcast, you'll know exactly where I'm going from here. Shout out my Seattle U Redhawks, all right, for going to Maples Pavilion in Palo Alto and taking down Stanford 77-69. And the parts I want to shout out specifically is at one point, the Redhawks got down 13 in that half, 57-44, and finished the game on a 33-12 run. And so many different guys. Malik Arrington, so many winning plays. Will Heimbrodt, and I know this is still a point of contention based on what we discussed pre-show. Seattle U is promoting that Heimbrodt had 7 blocks in the game. The official scorekeeper and statisticians had Heimbrodt at 6 blocks. For now, I'll run with 7 just because why not? But shout out Will Heimbrodt for the defensive force that he was. We talked about what Brock Felder could do. Now look what Will Heimbrodt's doing. Chris Victor returning to the Bay Area. San Bruno, California native Chris Victor returning to the Bay Area and winning one on the peninsula. So shout out to him. That's good stuff for the Redhawks, and massive props to them, because as all of you may or may not know, considering what else I do in terms of my job, the rest of the weekend did not go so well for Thomas Dunn in the sports world.
Hey, at the very least, there was one non-Stanford related win in your circle. As we know, the big game did not go Cal's way at all this weekend. And I mean, Seattle definitely jumps out as well, as like thinking about like this was a team, especially after the Cal Poly loss a couple weeks ago. We were kind of down on them of like, we need to see them have a bounce back. We need to see them really kind of show that they're still going to be this team that we think is very capable of making some noise in conference play. And they hit the road for the first time. They get a big win against Stanford. First time they've ever beaten Stanford. They are now, I believe it's now 1-6 all time against the Cardinal.
Got to start somewhere.
But hey, you got to start somewhere. They're new into the WCC. They up the league. They up the win quality, and now they'll head into the week. They'll be in Vegas for the Resorts World tournament. So they'll be starting in on that. But the thing that jumped out for me this week, it's kind of the opposite end of the spectrum here. And it's, I mean, man, Oregon State they're in free fall right now. It feels like they were 3-0 a week ago. We talked about them, about how they've kind of gotten by, but the skin of their teeth, 3 wins by a combined 7 points. And since then, they have lost 3 straight games. They lost to Oregon, excusable, on the road, a much better Oregon team than this Oregon State team, but they still had that one pretty competitive most of the way through. But then they went out, they end up in the they end up playing in their tournament, and they start out, they lose to Evansville. As I was kind of scanning through again, like where they were in Ken Palm at that moment, that was team 281. Then they go out and then lose in double overtime to the Gales, the Iona Gales. They're KenPom 176, and it just feels like the air has come out of the balloon for this team. And yes, we're only 6 games in, but I don't see much of an identity to this team. I don't see who is stepping up to be the guy. And no disrespect to what Josiah Lake II has been able to do to this point. He is the leading scorer for this team. But when a former walk-on is your guy at this point, that typically does not bode well for your long-term success. I know, especially coming from a St. Mary's guy, that's something to be said because Tommy Kuzi absolutely was one of those guys.
How
But
rich.
that is not the norm that we are used to seeing. This is something that Oregon State has to really be able to turn it around quickly, because this, I mean, their schedule wasn't all that great to begin with. I think we're underselling. Like, I think we expected a little bit more from Des White. We expected more from some of the other transfers that have come in. You look at what they have coming up. Yes, they'll have UMass on Monday to finish up the trip in the Virgin Islands. Cal Baptist Vermont. It's not like they have a huge number of big games. Their next big game is going to be Arizona State right before the start of conference play, and they do start with Santa Clara and USF.
Easy. So easy.
Easy start to conference play. But it feels like the Beavers need to get right quickly. They get about a month to really kind of straighten things out, but they're losing to teams that they shouldn't be losing to. And we are here once again talking about problems for the Beavers away from home.
Yeah, we are. And you mentioned one of the names who I think needs to step up, and that's Des White. He did really a great job at Missouri State. And now when you walk in and the way Wayne Tinkle recruited him and the way I think he was meant to fit in at the start of the season, he's someone who needs to be doing more. I think in terms of just general offensive approach, from aggressiveness to attacking to efficiency, Des White needs to be better. I think he will be better. But I think when you look at where the buck kind of starts and stops, someone has to help Josiah Lake II. I need more from Jorge Diaz-Graham. I need more from Yak. Everybody from Oregon State just has to give me a little bit more. And that's a kind of a little bit different compared to some other teams who are continuing to like pick themselves off the mat. And I'm going to give a credit to a pair of Bay Area schools that did their job and then some. Santa Clara, suffocating defense against Idaho State and Louisiana, held them to an average of 32% shooting from the floor, suffocated them, held Louisiana to 43, and what almost felt like a vintage St. Mary's performance at times. And conversely, USF, how hard have we been on USF? We have been very hard on them. And I think rightfully so, because we know how good they can be. And then they provide a really good responding win at the Sanford Pentagon against Minnesota. And I think I like what I saw from Ryan Beasley. I know we've had questions about the secondary ball handling, but again, Mookie Cook did some things. David Fuchs is still doing good things. It's a step in the right direction. Like that is absolutely a step in the right direction. Give me some more USF. We can't, and we're not going to handhold this team because we know how good they can be. So this is a good step. All right, do it again.
Right. I mean, USF had that was kind of the most complete game we have seen from them. I think the best overall performance we've seen from USF, and we'll get into a little bit about it because it's now time to back up the win against a team that they have beaten in the past, against a team they should have beaten. So let's not make a mistake that thinking that, oh, Minnesota is like a great win. It's a good win. It's a win that was necessary, but this is a team that still needs to prove it otherwise. And they'll obviously have some opportunities coming up this week to talk about that. Just one note back on Oregon State, just thinking about, this offense, like they're shooting 41% as a team. They're shooting 31% from three. Like they're -3 in the rebounding column. Like they need to figure something out because clearly like all of the wires are crossed and they just are not pointed in the right direction at this moment. And with 3 straight losses, I know like it's different when they play at home, but that cannot be the norm. And the longer this goes, the more this just, I mean, it's already a hot seat, I feel like, for Wayne Tinkle, but like losses like this are going to make it hotter and hotter as we get closer to the end of the season, especially as Oregon State's going to transition back into the new Pac-12. So there's a lot riding on what the Beavers are going to be looking like the rest of the season.
I 100% agree. And before we switch hands real quick, I think we have to go beyond the vacuum of what this just does for Oregon State, and how about the rest of the conference? Because we know how good Oregon State is in Gill. So what happens if a team like USF or Santa Clara like trips up in Gill Coliseum? Like that's going to end up being a problem for the conference more than anything. And I hate to make these one-to-one comparisons because it's not entirely fair. But when I think of teams that were thorn in the side of teams that were pretty good, I think of the LMU of the last few years. They're good enough to beat you, and they haven't been good enough to get an at-large bid or be close to it. Oregon State, I could absolutely see them fitting that mold this year.
Yeah, I mean, Oregon State, I mean, that is a team that's very good at home. And yeah, they could absolutely be the one that plays spoiler for someone this year, because LMU won't be playing spoiler because they've actually been playing really well to this point of the season. 6-0. We talked about that. And we're going to get into a little bit about what we're going to see this week, because we got a lot of basketball to talk about. We've got a lot to go through because Feast Week does begin, or Feast Week has already begun. And there's any number of tournaments we can kind of talk about as far as who's going to be where. I'm going to go through the full list right now. So we've got the Players Era. Gonzaga begins that on Monday. Sunshine Slam, the Ocean Division Pacific, they start Monday. LMU, also in that same event, starts Monday. The Paradise Jam, Oregon State wraps it up on Monday. The Maui Invitational, Washington State will be starting that against Chaminade on Monday as well. Again, a ton of these tournaments starting on Monday. The Acrisure Series, 4 different WCC teams are involved. San Diego starts play on Tuesday, Pepperdine on Wednesday, San Francisco Thursday, and Santa Clara on Thursday. The Battle for Atlantis, where St. Mary's will be in the Bahamas, they begin on Wednesday. And then the last of the WCC teams is Seattle, and they will begin theirs on Friday at the Resorts World Classic. Portland has already wrapped up their MTE as they were hosting the Portland Invitational this past weekend. And so as we're starting to think about these groupings, think about these matchups, I think the first thing to kind of go through here is like who has the most to gain from their tournament and who has the most to lose. And I'm going to at least start off who I think has the most to gain out of this week, because there's any number of these teams. You can point to Gonzaga, St. Mary's, like Seattle, like everyone has something to gain from this week. But the most to gain, at least for me, I think it's Santa Clara. I think it's the Broncos who have the most to gain out of this week. And it's really because of the first matchup with St. Louis. St. Louis is also undefeated. They're 5-0. And this is a team that is starting to meet what we thought the expectations were of a year ago. Now, remember, St. Louis last year had all those transfers come over from Indiana State, and there was a lot of hype about what they could have been. And then it was injury after injury after injury, and they never were able to get off the mat. This year, however, they are healthy, they look rejuvenated, and this is a team that is going to make some noise when it comes to Selection Sunday. Right now, in their small sample size of 5 games, they're averaging 95 points. They're shooting 53% from the field, 39% from 3. Robbie Avila, who has already cemented himself as a star in college basketball, 13.6 points per game. He's shooting 58% from the field and 58% from 3. So it does not matter where he's shooting from. He's got it going from both spots. You look at an Amari McCautry, 14.8 leading the team. But this is a squad that also, they turned the ball over a lot, 16.8 turnovers per game early on for the Billikens. This with Santa Clara being a better defensive team this year, that is an area that could play to their advantage. That is an area that you would hope that the Broncos can push through, because game 1 is important, because game 2 is either going to be Stanford or Minnesota. And of course, over the last few days, that has now become a matchup, regardless of who it is, of a WCC team who's already beaten them. Mm-hmm. Stanford already has lost to Seattle. Minnesota's already lost to San Francisco. So regardless, regardless of getting a win against St. Louis, which would be a massive, massive coup for the Broncos, you better get game 2, because if you stumble there, don't get either one, now it's starting to, it muddies the water about what they've already accomplished to this point. But if they were able to go 2-0 this week, they're already 60 in Ken Palm right now. I could see this team starting to scratch the surface of the top 50.
Yeah, for Santa Clara, I think the gauntlet is St. Louis right now. And Josh Schertz, I think when you look at last year and his Billikens team compared to this year, a lot less injuries, and chief among them, Robbie Avila. We know how much he was in and out of the lineup last year. And you mentioned the turnovers, and St. Louis playing such a high pace of play, that kind of lends credence to why that is. And, in years past, we'd say, oh, Santa Clara, St. Louis, this is going to be a high-powered, potent offensive matchup. Now it's more, to me at least, is kind of like a styles make fights type game. St. Louis high-powered offense, Santa Clara physical defense that may or may not win out. And the one thing I really want to see is how smart is Santa Clara when they're facing Robbie Avila? How much do they send doubles? How much do they shade him over? Are they wary of the skip pass across the way? St. Louis then gets a wide open 3 in rotation. And for me, a dual key for that is how consistent can Buki Aboye be? Because Buki Aboye is a very raw prospect, but we saw how good he can be against Nevada. And then in the following game against Idaho State, he fouled out of the game, wasn't really in it, so to speak. So for me, it's at least how smart can Buki Aboye be? How consistent can he be? And will the Santa Clara 3-point shooting return after it's been a 2-game absence where they've been way off from beyond the arc? So that's really what I want to see. And I know Santa Clara, you mentioned it with the second game. To me, it was just a game on the radar for me at the start of the year, this Stanford Minnesota game. Now for me it's almost a bump in the road type game. Like, this is one where this is turning into a flat tire affair, considering what other teams have done. And that's no disrespect to Seattle U and USF, but if they win in the manner in which they did, there's no reason why Santa Clara can't and shouldn't do the same.
Yeah, I agree with you there. And because again, like, to this point, Santa Clara's kind of avoided the speed bumps, and I think there are still speed bumps coming up. They are going to have to still avoid those. But oddly, that 2 power conference teams, power 4 teams, could end up being speed bumps for this Santa Clara team, which I think speaks a lot to what Santa Clara has done to this point, regardless of what Seattle and USF have already accomplished. Like, who's the one for you that can get the most out of this week?
It's a very conventional answer, and I understand that there are more teams that, probably earn the right to, rise up and get into the March Madness at-large conversation. But tried and true Gonzaga, I think, for me, with the way the players era is and the way Oklahoma and Creighton they're still kind of figuring it out. And I think they can be mutually exclusive things. That the Zags beat the brakes off those teams, and they did a great job in doing so on both sides of the ball. And that those teams are still kind of finding their way. I think the players like Gonzaga, Alabama, yes, please sign me up right now. If you want to find out that Zag defense is real, you're going to find out against 40-plus minutes against Nate Oates and the way they bomb the ball. I think, and then you look at Maryland, a tough team with Kevin Willard. That's always tried and true. And then obviously the third game in the players era, and it goes without saying, this is a very deep players era field depending on who they end up getting. But I just think in terms of, I would say these set of games is not necessarily geared toward, what are you going to do in WCC play? For me, it's what are you going to do if you get to the round of 32 and beyond? Because these are going to be the types of teams that you start to face, and that's when you find out if this Zag defense is really for real. And I think for me, I want to see what especially against Alabama, what does Talon Grant Foster kind of look like against that pace? And we saw him. Grand Canyon did play Alabama a few years ago in that tournament after they did take down St. Mary's. So we'll see what Talon Grant Foster can bring to the table in that regard. But for me, it's more of a March Madness deep run proving ground.
Yeah, I mean, again, taking nothing away from how good Gonzaga has been these first few weeks, because they have been awesome.
Yeah.
But you looked at what they did a year ago. We were kind of talking about the same thing with this Gonzaga team. Like, opening night, they just beat the doors off of Baylor, and this was a Zags team that was kind of off and running early on, and then they kind of came back to earth. Like, as they started to get into the MTEs, they did run into Purdue in the Maui, which, well, that was gonna not end well for the Zags no matter what. But you started to see them kind of like some of the challenges, some of their deficiencies kind of reared their ugly head a little bit more in the non-conference as they kind of continued on. And not to say that it's going to happen, but I think we need to see if the Zags can overcome that, as now they're going to face tougher competition, stiffer competition, and teams that have already kind of figured out some of those early season bumps and avoided those, or have kind of already worked out some of the bugs in the system at this point. And I think that's the one thing that we need to see if Gonzaga can then rise to that occasion. Again, you mentioned like Gonzaga, Alabama, like sign me up to watch that one all day, because like you think of, like that game is going to just be like up and down. Like if this game is, I would not be surprised if this game ends up in the 90s for both squads. Like,
is it crazy? Is it crazy to say game of the year potential? Because I'm not so sure that's too far fetched.
I mean, I don't know. Like considering what Troy did this past week, like any one of their games could have been game of the week too.
Guilty. I watched that USC game. Very much guilty. I was a prisoner of the moment.
It's like, I mean, hey, I was watching that San Diego State one down to the end, and before the Mountain West Network cut out on me, I always have problems with the Mountain West Network.
How dare they? Well, that's not to say we don't have problems with ESPN Plus on our own, but I was ready to say that if Troy were hold on, that they would be quote unquote the real men of Troy. But oh well, we'll have to save that for next time.
Hey, Troy did take out the Aztecs, so
they did. But does that hurt the WCC in the long term with the way San Diego State's kind of rebuilding? You know, we'll see.
Well, maybe it clears up another spot for March Madness for another WCC team.
Who knows? But
again, like, by the transitive property, we now know that LMU is clearly better than San Diego State.
Of course. And that's exactly why you're going to say LMU has the most to gain from this week, obviously, but beyond Santa Clara.
Exactly. I mean, like thinking about just that LMU going into this week, we can kind of talk about what they're going to look like. Again, they start on Monday. They're going to be starting out against Florida Atlantic, who just really kind of took it to Pacific the other night. And then game two game two for LMU, they're going to be, I think I have to look at the schedule.
George Mason or
right. Ohio. The Bobcats could be matchup number 2. So their schedule is not the best. We kind of always knew that about LMU, but there are opportunities here to kind of continue to build the resume, because they're now knocking on the door of the top 100. They're like right behind Seattle, right there. I think Seattle's 103, LMU's 106. They're right there. And by the end of the week, if they are able to kind of get through the weekend with a couple of wins, are we talking about a top 100 LMU squad at this point? And I don't think like that would have been something I would have thought I'd be saying before the calendar turned to December, that LMU is a top 100 team. Because we very well could be saying that about them, very much saying about that Seattle. But as we're kind of talking that through, thinking about what that's going to look like, let's kind of switch gears a little bit. And we did this recording last week, earlier in the week, I should say, not last week. But let's go through and see what the vibe with LMU is, dances aside, from MJ Amey as LMU starts their tour through the Sunshine Slam. All right, we're happy to bring in LMU guard MJ Amey into the podcast. And MJ, 6-0 start. We talked a lot about just what this season was going to look like at Media Day and everything else. But I think we have to start out with all of the locker room videos we've seen post game and just the dances, the vibes, because we've commented on a lot that it's like you guys are like team A on vibes this season so far, and just kind of like who's picking the playlist, who's actually in charge of setting all of that up.
Hey, that's all the guy is in charge. That's all Stan, man. That's all Coach Stan. He made it a thing. I forget which stand he was saying it on Immediate Day, but he was saying after wins he gonna dance after the locker rooms. And I didn't know he would be for real until we got the first win, and then the second win, and then it just kept going. But that's all him, because he has a choice of music. We don't know what he's gonna come with. Then he comes in with the glasses. So I mean, as long as we keep doing our job, then those videos gonna keep popping up.
Now, is he the best dancer on the team, or is someone else got some competition for him?
No. We all know the truth. We know who the best dancer on the team, who got the most rhythm, most choreography. Your guy right here. So, but he definitely. I'll say though, I'm not a hater. He got some moves. He got good footwork. I ain't gonna lie. So
yeah. So people will always ask you to like break down plays on the court, but you mentioned I wasn't really sure if coach was going to do it. Can you break down what you were seeing when this first actually took place in the locker room? And you're like, okay, I guess we're going for it then.
Now, he said, like I said, he was going to do it. So, I was anticipating, like, is he really going to come in here dancing? And if he does, I'm going to be right there with him doing my little two-step, whatever. But it's just now kind of anticipation of just what song he's going to play next, of course. And I kind of love how like the people are feeding into it. Like there'll be a lot of comments, a lot of likes and views on them dance videos. So at the end of the day though, as long as we keep winning, it's good to have fun in the moment when the success happens, when the successful act happens. But then the next day rent is due, so we got to do it over again, get focused, lock back in. So, but definitely got to have fun while you're in the moment.
Exactly. And now one of those big moments, obviously, to get to 6-0, the comeback win against Santa Barbara. You were doing that without Jan Vide after he came off a great game, down 14 that second half. You guys have turned into a second half team. You guys were able to come back, really fight through that. You obviously a big part of that, the 29 on that night. Just kind of talk about what were the conversations in the huddle, in the timeouts, when it got to that point and you were starting to kind of make that turnaround for the comeback.
Well, it got a little bad before it got good, but the conversations, even in the locker room at halftime was just, we knew we put ourselves in a predicament of being down during halftime, and then we put ourselves in a hole, of course. Shout out to Santa Barbara. They're a really good basketball team, but we know the things that we can control, and we were kind of just allowing to happen. So most of it was just like, let's go. Like, where's our energy? Let's get our energy back. And, let's just chip away. Once you're down big, all you can do is, okay, by the next media, let's get it to single digits. Okay, by then let's get it to 4. And honestly, the conversations was, okay, let's buckle down, start getting some stops, and we know we're gonna eventually score the ball. Even when we have our little drops, but we know the ball's gonna go in the bucket because we have a lot of talent on our side. And from there, it's just kind of, all right, let's get it to 4. All right, let's get it to 3. And we started chipping away actually really pretty quickly. And by the time it was 5 minutes left in the game, it was a ball game. So
we've talked about the different contributors. Obviously, we're talking to yourself. We mentioned Jan already, but I feel like Aaron McBride has had some nice timely plays over the course of this campaign. What have you seen from him and some of the other guys who you want to shout out in terms of their growth to this point in the season?
Aaron has been a great asset to our team. Me and his conversations, I just know what he can bring to our team. And a lot of it is during practice. I want his motor to pick up. But Aaron's a person when it comes down to the game, when it comes down to the right moment, he is going to do what he has to do. He is going to fight. He is going to scratch crawl, get whatever rebound he needs to for us. And I enjoy him, because he knows his role. He knows that's his job and what he has to do for us to be successful. And he continues to do it. And shout out to Aaron McBride, because a lot of stuff that he does can't get unnoticed and bypass, you feel me? I don't get those points. I don't get that. We don't get that many possessions, if it's not for Aaron rebounding. And just for the other guys, shout out Jalen Shelley for his career high. That guy's a real dog, a real beast. And just everybody that's on that court, I just love playing with. It's fun. I'm gonna live and die with those guys, whether we go out, winning or, we haven't lost yet, but you feel me, even win or lose. But I'm happy with the guys that we have on the court, and we're all just trying to figure out and find a way to win, rather than anything else. And that's the biggest goal and the biggest mindset around our team. But definitely a lot of guys been stepping up. For AJ to be a freshman and have his first start, even though he didn't particularly play well, but the fact he stepped up and just took that moment and try to make the best of it, So there's going to be a lot of guys you see down the stretch who definitely start to pick up and make some big plays for us. So, yeah.
I mean, like thinking about the way this kind of season has come, you come off the bench each of the first 6 games, and I was listening to one of the broadcasts, and they talked about how this was kind of like a little bit your call on like wanting to come off the bench and kind of being that spark plug. Kind of talk a little bit about like that decision to kind of play that role for this team, and this. Obviously, it's worked incredibly well. You're still the leading scorer on this team, and being in that second unit. But just kind of talk about what kind of was your mindset in that, and then also how that conversation with Stan.
I mean, for me, I'm very confident. First and foremost, shout out Rodney Brown, and I'm just very confident in the. I mean, me and him starting off the game played the same position in the 2 guard, but I mean, like I said, there's only could be, you feel me, like start the game, it can only be so many people on the court. So I mean, I'm not a person who's going to let my ego dictate whether I start or not, because it really doesn't matter to me. It really matters if we win and who's at the end of the game, you know, and what happens throughout that process. I mean, my decision was just, I feel like we can really get off and get after teams if Rodney comes in and Rodney just does what he do offensively, brings that juice. Oh, and then number 5, Myron Amey comes in, then he brings that energy, whatever a team may need. You know, maybe I need to come in and shut down a player. You know, maybe that's what the night calls for. And, you know, being on the bench, I'm able to read and dictate how the start of our game and what we need when I do go in, so that I can make sure that when I do come in, that the game boosts up. Okay, now the game is really starting, you know, and that was the whole kind of picture in my frame in mind, because I know my strengths and I know our team's strengths and weaknesses. And so, I mean, like I said, making that decision led us to 6-0 at this point. So, and then of course with V-Day being out, we'd be looking to make some adjustments. But for the most part, I mean, I think we're in a good place. And then, I mean, with that conversation with coach, it was just straightforward. Like I told him I'm not worried about starting, but whatever you need from me, whatever you need me. If you want me to start, if you need me to start, I'm gonna start. But I'm telling you, from man to man, like I don't mind. I don't mind coming off the bench and being that spark plug, being that leader for the second group, you know, because all I care about is it's my last year. I just want to win and go to places I've never been before. So
you've discussed one of the biggest areas of growth for this team and finding ways to win. And obviously last year, opportunities, you got close, couldn't necessarily get over the top. And a lot of the ones maybe that you may or may not want back. When you look at the process of the offseason and to this point in the season, how does it finding ways to win actually manifest itself? Is it simply doing the same things harder, or have you kind of adjusted to yourself, and how's your team kind of adjusted to different scenarios?
I feel like our coaches, shout out to our coaches. I feel like our coaches do a great job in our preparation and just what we need and what they have a sense. They really study and have a sense of where our weaknesses is and where we really need to grow. So I think even through good and bad, they're going to tell us, we're going to think we did something bad regardless, because the way they get on us and want us to improve, you know, it's never like a satisfied mode, in which I love, you know, because like I said, it's still early and we still got way more to go. It's just a sense of just urgency. Like, you know, we created for ourselves to have a type of, you know, have somewhat of a little bit of clout just going into games that teams know that we are undefeated. They're dancing in locker rooms. You feel me? So they want to create this urgency of just like teams are coming after us. So we got to buckle down on things that we learn, and thank God that we're learning through these games while winning. So it's just the preparation has been I feel like has been the real separator, and just like when we get in those tough moments, that we just stick to our preparation and just stick to what we've been doing up until this point, and our principles, being selfless, connected, relentless. I mean, that's what we live by, and I think that's what's been getting us over the top, over the humps when we do face adversity in these games. So
now, one of the things, I mean, there's obviously, like you talked a little bit about it, kind of just the process of what it was like during the off season, kind of coming into the season. What has maybe been a surprise or a difference for you since the season has begun? Obviously, there's the way practices go can be one thing, but once you get into game speed and get into actual competition, it can feel different. It can look different. What's maybe something that's been maybe a pleasant surprise for you about the way this team has played in the first 6 games?
I would say our attention and our focus like leading up to games and then while we're in the game. But I'll say Santa Barbara, I wouldn't say I was surprised, but it really showed me like who he can be, because for 30 minutes of basketball, we were playing the worst basketball we had for the season. In terms of our game plan and just execution and things like that. And the fact that we were able to adjust and find a way, and then on top of that, win that game and dig deep, it just shows that you feel me? I'm big on Christianity, and I'm gonna just say like God really has us, and as long as we keep putting ourselves in position for God to work with us, great things are going to keep happening, but the fact that we keep putting ourselves in position to reach success, I think, is the biggest thing. Like we're not going to give up. I mean, from the early USC exhibition, you could see we even fought our way back, but we just came up short. But I think that's the biggest thing early is like we got to never say we got to never say no. Like we're not going to quit. Like we're going to keep playing. We're going to keep trying to figure it out because we know who we got on our side. We know that it's us versus us mentality, and I think that's what's been really great with this group is just that we're so focused and bought in on what we have to do other than the outside noise and what everybody else has going on. So
you've given a lot of credit to your coaches, and Zach and I we're so used to Lorenzo Romar, the head coach, for all of his experience. But how can you quantify the impact? And I know his tenure is still relatively young at LMU, but how can you quantify Coach Romar's impact on what you guys do?
I mean, man, yeah, I only been here for a couple of years, but these couple of years I've been here with him. I mean, me and him growing, our relationship is crazy. It's in a great way, and just he has the experience. He's been there. He has like I said, like the experience and just the knowledge of just he's been to places where we're all trying to get to, with whether that's other coaches or players ourselves, like. So of course, when he speaks, everybody gonna listen. You got to bite down and listen and take in what he's trying to teach and what he's preaching, because he knows better. So it's just like we can't go against that. He's been there, he's done that. So it's just like let's follow. Of course we're gonna follow. We're gonna always follow and show the utmost respect to all of our coaches. But with Romar, it's like he really lived this and done this, bro. He knows what it takes. So. He's always gonna be our glue guy for our program in terms of just the positivity he brings, in terms of that way, but he just brings a sense of just knowledge that not all of us have, not all of us have, and an experience that not all of us have. So he's gonna share the real, and he's gonna give us the extra. I say the extra positivity, the extra energy boost for us to believe and have high faith in ourselves. So
we're going to get you out of here in just a little bit. LMU taking on. It's going to be heading down to the Sunshine Slam. Yeah, the Sunshine Slam. Get that little tongue twister out of there. Down in Daytona Beach this coming week for Feast Week. Is there anything outside of, obviously basketball is the main focus. It's a business trip and everything else. But is there anything you're looking forward to on the trip? Otherwise,
I'm gonna be honest. I don't know. I'm a person that lives big in the moment. So whatever presents itself in the moment, I'm gonna find out. I'm gonna find out the activities. What we can do as a team, of course. But I know some of our teammates probably got idea. But I'm gonna just tag. I'm of course be with my team, tag along. We're gonna make the best of each moment. And of course we're going down there just to handle business and continue this thing and hopefully walk about that tournament 8-0. So
yeah, I mean, you guys may or may not like this suggestion, but you guys are not too far away from the Daytona International Speedway. Go drive some NASCAR cars, you guys. That is absolutely on the table, and if nothing else, you get to see a nice.
Hey, don't give me tips here. Yeah. I'll go out there. You feel me? Go crazy.
But. Yeah, they have paid experiences for it, and imagine you guys get to watch in on coach in like the passenger seat, and he's like, oh my god, he's feeling the G forces. So I'm not. Yeah. It's out there. It's on the table, but I do also.
That is valid. So I've never been to Daytona, so we'll see.
Yeah, if it ends up on the Instagram, I will take 1% credit for this, and I will say, if LMU and you guys get to where you want to go, I do have to ask, are you going to go back to that rock climbing wall and give it some credit?
Yeah, I got some unfinished business with that rock climbing. So you might see me back there trying, man. I don't know. So
Yeah. All right. Thanks a lot, MJ, for
Thank
taking some time chatting with us. Good luck this week at the Sunshine Slam, and hopefully we're talking with you guys about 8-0 after the week is over.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you so much. Hope you have a good one. Thank you.
All right, you too. I mean, I don't know, like the Daytona option feels like they've got to do that as the victory celebration, right? Like you get 2 wins, then they get to go to Daytona to race those cars.
See, and I'm going to be very honest about my suggestion. That was a very shameless suggestion by me because I am a big NASCAR fan and there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. I just kind of want to see it happen. Like imagine, and I don't know if there are any like height like restrictions or anything like that, but imagine like Rick Asanza and like the driver in the passenger seat or Stan Johnson with the helmet on and you hear him just screaming off in the distance as he feels the G-force is going 130 in a banked corner. Like we need that. I need that. It just, if we talk about injected into my veins, that's what I need, quite honestly. And I was very shameless in telling MJ, and you know, I may or may not have told LMU PR that this is something that you can do in Daytona Beach. So I'm intrigued to see if it comes to fruition. We'll see if it ends up doing so, but I can't say I didn't try.
Exactly. And you know what? Like, hey, that would be a fun watch if they end up doing it. We see the video. I mean, they got down there early, so they did have a couple of days to kind of get themselves settled and everything else. Probably gonna let that one settle until they've handled their business. That typically is probably what I would think would end up happening. But hey, you never know. We'll be out on the lookout for the video from Daytona International Speedway from the LMU Lions. But I mean, looking at the schedule, we've touched on a little bit about everything we've kind of seen, and we've talked about LMU, we've talked about Gonzaga, Washington State. Like, I almost feel like it's almost a disaster waiting to happen. Like, this could be like the one, like this could just really snowball on them. St. Mary's, like, I mean, St. Mary's is the battle for Atlantis. Like, it's not like the marquee names in here, but that Vanderbilt team, if they end up seeing Vanderbilt at the end or at some point in this tournament, that's going to be a really good test for them. And it's funny because obviously they saw Vanderbilt in the tournament just this past year, and just kind of talking with the host for Locked On Vandy, because we hooked up for the NCAA tournament and we're kind of talking about the teams and everything else, that one of the challenges they had a year ago was the fact that they lacked size. They didn't have the size. They just got beat up by St. Mary's and just got dragged into the mud. Well, guess what they went out and got in the offseason? They went out and got some size. So this time around, it actually probably be a little bit more of an even match on that front. But as we know, like St. Mary's, they shoot it a lot better than they did a year ago.
Yeah. So. What did St. Mary's go out and need? Some shooting and athleticism. And so far they've done that. But the one thing I kind of really want to see, mainly in terms of the operation, how does the road offense look? How does it look when the communication breaks down? I know it's not a true road environment, and I know they did play some exhibitions on the road, so I will fully acknowledge that portion. But what happens when things starts to break down at full-on game speed, more consistent game reps? What does Lee and Campbell look like? Does Randy Bennett give more trust and more runway to Tony Duckett? How does Mikey Lewis continue to adjust with the focal point of defense going out there? And while I still expect the defense to travel, I still think it's not up to the standard that St. Mary's is typically accustomed to on a game in, game out basis. But we'll see. Can Andrew McKeever continue his solid stretch of play? And eventually, I think there's still some lasting questions about what St. Mary's can do. I just think they've done a good job in terms of what they need to take care of in the first place.
Yeah, it's a St. Mary's team that looks very much like a St. Mary's team at this point. They just shoot it a lot better than they did a year ago. The defense may not be as staunch as we're used to seeing over the last few years, but it's still a good defensive team, a good rebounding team. And now we're going to get to see them. They start with Wichita State in game 1, and then they will get that game 2 of that one. They'll either get Colorado State or Virginia Tech. So if they get Colorado State, another team they're very familiar with, of course, not the Nico Medved Colorado State teams anymore. So a little bit of a different flavor to those Rams if they end up playing them. But we talk about the lineup of what's going to happen later on this week, lineup of basketball, because honestly, like I know football is where everyone else is going. I'm going to be watching basketball on Thanksgiving. That's going to be the laundry list of games and everything else. But the things we have to talk about, the power rankings we have to talk about, is not on the court. It's on the dinner plate.
Mm-hmm.
What are what are the power rankings of items that go on the plate? Thomas, like what are your top three? And then we're going to go into the overrated, underrated item. What are those two that kind of stick out in those categories? But let's start with the power rankings. What are 1, 2, and 3?
For me, I'm going to start with I think this is like the glue guy of any essential Thanksgiving plate. Mashed potatoes with gravy. All right. And they're very crucial with gravy. And I think you do that well, you've got off to a good start. And we'll get into our overrated, underrated, which is why I have this so high. That's for me. I love me a good mashed potatoes and I love me a good gravy. I'm personally a big fan of stuffing. I think people give it too much flack, and I understand why people do. Like, don't get me wrong. It's not, is it the star of the show and is it dazzling in a dress or anything? No, it's not. But does it do the job for me, and does it fit a need in terms of texture? Yes, it does. So I'll give me some stuffing, and then give me some pumpkin pie. Pumpkin pie, I don't need it. I'm not going to need it on a daily basis. I don't even eat it on a monthly basis. I'm a chocolate cream pie guy. Okay. But at that specific time, in that specific setting, I can get behind it. It does its job. And I know in some cases, my family does sometimes do atypical Thanksgiving menus. But pumpkin pie, I can get behind it. I understand its traditional role. And for me, it'll fit on my plate.
All right. So, like going through the top three, you actually matched two of mine. So we're going to have to, but I'm going to take a different twist, because I agree with you. You got to start with like the mashed potatoes and gravy is like kind of like the staple. It holds it all together. But I am particular about those mashed potatoes because a lot of times I am the one who's making them.
Okay, look at you. Oh, my bad. My bad.
That's my domain. That's my job. It's like I like to have them a little bit more on the buttery side, having that mix of like the Yukons and the russets. So like getting that mix of different styles of potatoes. I'm kind of can go either way on skin, no skin, depending on the type. But I think like having that mix, like mashed potatoes and gravy, obviously on top of that list. But then also like I've got to throw in the cranberry sauce. When cranberry sauce is done well, that is one that I think is always like toward the top for me. Like there is a little bit of nostalgic for it as well, because I've always kind of had that as part of the Thanksgiving I like having the sweetness. We also make, like when we do it right, like there's usually some like Grand Marnier thrown in there, so you get a little bit of like that extra zing to the cranberry sauce. So that's one to kind of round out in there. And then of course you mentioned it, the pumpkin pie. That's also it's one on my list as well. So rounding out those three. But now I think this is going to be the controversial one, because again, we're going overrated, underrated on items, and I'm going to start on the overrated item.
Okay.
And I'm just never been that big of a fan of the item, and I can only have it in small chunks. It is the honey ham. I just am like, I think the honey ham is an overrated item. I know that the turkey doesn't carry a lot either, but there's just something about like the flavor of the ham that I'm good with it. Maybe like one slice every 3 years. Like that's
okay. Wow.
The level of like, if it's there, it's like, I'll pass. Like, and almost every time it's passed, like, but every few years, like, all right, fine, I'll have one. But I'm going with the honey ham as an overrated item.
I will join you in that department, but not with that specific item. Turkey, overrated. It stinks. It's a dry poultry, and it's not like you go to a taqueria and you can get good tender chicken. A turkey, you have to do so much to help it. It's not going to if you stand alone with it, you cook it, that's fine. It's going to taste like a brick. It's dry. And then you season it. Okay, you put salt, garlic, onion powder, whatever combination you want to put on it. There's only so much you can do with turkey. There's only so much you can do. I can dump it in gravy and I'll be like, okay, I can tolerate this. But if you give me just a piece of turkey, you cut it up, you cook it, you put it on my plate, and there's nothing on that thing, I'm in for a bad time. And that's maybe people are gonna be like, oh, you don't cook the turkey right, or whatever that may be. Well, why does it matter so much to have to change things? Why can't it stand alone? Why can't it be a standalone food? Why can't it do it? And for me, it just can't.
And it's the dark meat or nothing, because like that's
Yes.
the dark meat's the only way it's even tolerable.
Yeah, it's just not worth. It's not worth the juice. Is not worth the squeeze. And quite honestly, like when sometimes I'll float the idea to my cousins, and we're all kind of in the same boat on this. Why don't we just change up the Thanksgiving menu? We know we sometimes have to power through the turkey portion of the evening.
Every so often, like maybe the switch up is going prime rib as the main item, because that's one, it's happened every so often. Now, for those who know the House of Prime Rib, I don't know if they still do it, but they also do. I remember they did Thanksgiving dinner from time to time at House of Prime Rib. So like that's also always a good spot, because they switch up the menu slightly on the sides and everything else for the day. But prime rib could be an alternative to the turkey.
I could see it. When I know we're a basketball show, but at least from the football side, it's a good change of pace back. So that'll get it done in a substitution form or something like that. But I can get behind it. I wouldn't want to do it too consistently, because it almost feels like you're breaking the bank, unless you go to a place like you mentioned, House of Prime Rib. It can get up there. But at least for me, like if Tommy's Joint in San Francisco was running something like that, I know I'd be in for a good time.
All right, the underrated category. What's the underrated item in your basket?
For me, it's not underrated in my specific basket, but I think it's underrated across, in general, if that makes sense. So I'm indifferent about eating this. I can or I can't. It kind of just depends how I feel on the day. A casserole, a casserole for me can go a long way. And for me, over the years, I've kind of flip-flopped back and forth, and specifically my family goes with a broccoli casserole. And, my dad does a pretty damn good job at it. And that's literally been his role at it. And for me, I've kind of growing up, as you can tell, I'm pretty young. So I had a young palate at certain points, and I would repulse myself from eating broccoli related items. But I know for a fact that's a really good broccoli casserole from the times I've had it. And just in general, a good casserole can go a long way. If you don't burn it, you're already off to a good start. And if you can actually turn it around and twist it into something good and something that, can hold together more than anything, I think it could go a long way, and it's underappreciated when done right.
All right, then the other one I'm going to go with for the underrated category, and I'm kind of going the opposite end of the quality spectrum of a previous item I mentioned. I mentioned in my top 3 of having the cranberry sauce, like the actual real cranberry, everything else. Well, my underrated item is going the opposite end of the quality spectrum, and it's going the canned cranberry sauce.
Oh, what a cop out!
Give me the cranberry jelly as my underrated item.
You know what I will give you instead? It's a technical foul. That is for a cop out answer is what that is.
I get razzed so often because of the canned cranberry by the in-laws and other family members that's the one I like. It's like, hey, that was the one I actually grew up with. I didn't grow up with the real cranberry. So what I remember is the canned stuff. And you know what? Like I really like the obviously real version of it, everything else, but there's still something familiar, comfortable about the cranberry jelly that I cannot get by, and so I'm going to stick with that as the underrated item.
Yeah, no, I could see why, and you have the thing is you have a bunch of life experience to back this up more than anything, and
it's also easy to prep. Just open the can and then it's done.
You mean you don't want to do arduous labor that takes all day? What?
Not on that day. There's too much basketball to watch. Can't be spending all the time doing that.
During Thanksgiving dinner, I will have Santa Clara Saint SLU on there. I will have it on the big TV, and the masses will be treated to WCC hoops.
There's going to be a lot of basketball that day, a lot to watch this week, and this is always the week where it feels like we're going to have we're going to either solidify what we think about certain teams, have wild questions about some of the others. So when we round back next week and talk about what happened during Feast Week, oh boy, there's going to be a lot of leftovers to talk about when we get to next week about everything we saw from each of these MTEs, each of what we saw from these teams, because now we'll be into December, 1 month in, and we'll know way more about all of these teams than we did as we are recording tonight. So As we get out of here, Thomas, any last thoughts as we get to feast week in the college basketball season?
Feast week, and this is more of a double entendre. I'm ready to eat, and that in terms of good hoops, in terms of good food. Exciting times to, if you feel the crossover season happening, college hoops is starting to rise up to be part of the mainstay of the TV rotation. If it wasn't already, and if it wasn't, why wasn't it for you? So very exciting times, and especially for the WCC. Lots of teams with chances, and really for me, the word of the week is opportunity. Lots of teams have opportunity, and then that's not necessarily to mean March Madness opportunity. It's to punch above your weight. Can you graduate into the next tier? We talked about what maybe Pacific can do, what LMU can do. I think that matters just as much as what Gonzaga can do, what St. Mary's can do. Now, what does Santa Clara do? What does USF do? I think everyone's running their own race, and I really want to see who can get out on the front foot.
We're gonna be pumping talked about the tournament, pumping the 4-bid WCC right now. We're starting it. We're getting we're gonna start it here in Feast Week. We're hungry. We want it 4-bid WCC.
We want it now.
All right. Well, thanks a lot for watching, everybody. Be sure to hit that subscribe button on YouTube, Spotify, or wherever you are listening. Follow along on social media at Unofficial WCC Pod. That's Thomas. I'm Zach. Thanks for watching, everybody, and we will catch you later.